Since 2021 by Saathi Global Education Network. My name is Jennifer George, and I will be your host this evening. It's a two-day event where we aim to bring together worldwide experts and leaders of the education sector to discuss transformations in school collaborations post-pandemic. The 2021 is on global teaching and learning, covering a wide array of opportunities that have recently opened up in the education sector. Spirited evening with our first panel discussion, I would like to introduce Saathi Global Education Network's CEO. Of the education sector since college, he started national students with reading English. He laid and physics in college. In professional tutoring and mentoring, as he helped millions of American high school students on one-to-one level with their academics. The urgent need for these students to about issues that were affecting our civilization from an early age and become with respect and empathy for diverse cultures. Achieved by a single human or even a single institution. And leading our future generations towards a sustainable. Mr. Sarda and his team network started growing and connecting with schools in order to facilitate international collaborations and skill building programs for their students. Project. So I will end my piece here and let him enlighten us further. Mr. Karthik Sarda, the founder and CEO of Saathi Global Education Network.
Thank you, Jennifer, for that amazing introduction. And thank you everyone for joining us here today. Before I begin, I would like to especially acknowledge our international guests who are joining from various time zones, early in the morning or late in the night. That's what this event is all about, connecting with each other, irrespective of our backgrounds and cultures. I've always been fascinated by the diversity that our world has, not just in terms of the traditions we follow, the food we eat, the languages we speak, or the clothes we wear, but in general, the whole ecosystems that have been built by nature that accommodates this diversity. The idea of Saathi was a little sudden to me. If I'm being honest, I had no idea where to begin in the early stages. It all started when I asked a student of mine about global warming, and to my surprise, he had barely any idea about rising temperatures or melting ice caps. I thought it was an exception, but the more students I asked about various issues that we face today as a society, be it poverty, racism, environment, gender discrimination, or such, most of them had barely any idea about what was happening outside of their local bubble. That's when I realized that this is something I want to work upon. I don't have the power of changing these scenarios, but I did have the power to educate young minds. And I realized that the best way to address these issues is to make sure that our upcoming generations are aware about these. Thus, we are finally launching our online platform where not only can schools easily collaborate for various international programs, but at the same time, their students can work together on projects oriented towards solving these global issues from an entrepreneurial point of view. Our goal is to instill important professional skills amongst these students and convert them into global problem solvers. At the same time, we are also building a supportive and collaborative community of educators, which is why this event in particular. And with this in mind, I would like to present a short video to you all that describes our vision for teachers, principals, coordinators, and all the other hardworking educators out there in the world, just like you all. So please allow me to share my screen and we'll introduce Saathi Global Education Network. Some people have pointed out that there's no audio. 1 second. But Pooja, can you confirm if there's audio?
Not right now.
Are like second homes to our children. And teachers, they're second parents. Every day you create a difference. Nurturing young minds, carving a bright future for them, and building a supportive community. But with all these responsibilities and the hard work, don't you deserve some support too? With Saathi Global Education Network, you become part of a worldwide community. A community of teachers, just like you. Where you matter. Where you can connect, collaborate, and cultivate. Become a part of something big. Get recognized for who you are.
So that was the introduction to Saathi Global Education Network. As you can guess, our focus is mainly on schools, teachers, international collaborations. And that's the theme that we have chosen for this particular conference as well, the theme of connecting, collaborating, and cultivating, with the idea of international collaborations at the center of it all. So without further delay, I'll actually let Jennifer take over and introduce our moderator for the day, Ms. Himali Chapia. So Jennifer, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Karthik. So without further ado, let me introduce our moderator for today's panel discussion, Ms. Himali Chapia. Ms. Himali Chapia has been a journalist since 2002. Since then, she has extensively and closely covered several beats, including education, environment, telecom, power, and RTI. But her specialization in the education field for a decade now has earned her the respect of being one of the finest education experts in media. She is on several government expert committees and contributes to public and private education institutions by giving her time and thought. She has earned several awards from various governments, as also from the Indian Institutes of Technology. In terms of her academic career, she graduated as a gold medalist from the Indian Institute of Journalism and New Media, which is run by Columbia University. She is also Achieving Gurukul graduate from the London School of Economics. Ms. Himali, over to you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Like every school does, may I request all of you, if that's okay by the moderator, Karthik, to turn on your cameras. I just want to see if everyone's present. Would it be possible for everyone to do that?
Yes, that would be awesome.
That would be great. Fantastic. Thank you. Okay, so feel free to turn it off whenever you want. I'm quickly going to introduce all of you. So I'm very excited and I welcome everyone who's plugged in from around the globe. I think each of us here shares a common mission, that of internationalization of education in a way that the young understand, accept, respect each other through connection, communication, and collaboration. And now, more than ever, we know that we're not limited to a classroom or the boundary. How far really is Belgium from Belgaum? I think just a click away. The world is our lab and our school, all under one sky. So I'd like to introduce our panelists here, who all have described themselves not only as fascinating teachers, leaders, but also lifelong learners. I'm very excited to listen to them. So here they are. I'll start with Mr. Dean Fusto, who's a 2020 recipient of the Klingenstein Fellowship at Teachers College, Columbia University, and the president and head of Brandon Hall School, an international boarding and day school serving students from grade 6 to 12. His career spans nearly 3 decades as an educational leader. He founded the Teach, Learn, Lead.net community in 2014 as a tribute to his heroes, teachers, both men and women. Mr. Fusto is a past recipient of a National Endowment of Humanities Fellowship and an E.E. Ford Fellow. As a thought leader and influencer, he's published 5 books, dozens of articles, and holds an MAT from the SIT Graduate Institute, an MA from Columbia University, and a proactive leadership certification from Columbia University. He's founded and designed numerous experiential service learning trips for thousands of students and teachers. Do you want to say hello to everyone, Mr. Fusto?
Very happy to be here, and thank you for inviting me to be part of this panel.
We're glad to have you. I'll move on to our next panelist, who is Miss Asheka Tenzin. Ms. Tenzin is the academic leader at the D.Y. Patil International Group of Schools. She has over 25 years of teaching experience and online workshop facilitator. She also specializes in mentoring teachers, like a teach the trainer kind of a thing, and build up continuum schools. Hi, Asheka. Glad to have you here.
Thank you. It's my privilege to come here. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Connell is a passionate and lifelong educator and learner with 25 years of experience in teaching and learning and leading. She's worked and consulted in 30 schools in 12 countries on 4 continents. This experience includes teaching across various grade levels and leading as a PYP coordinator, principal, and head of school. Hi, Ms. Connell. Thank you. Ms. Cecilia Flores, the co-founder of, and she had to send me a recording for this, Colitas, Trencitas, am I going correct? Thank you. Considers herself an educator at heart and has invested hugely in the holistic well-being of all her students. She's been teaching for over 30 years around the world and has had the opportunity to work alongside children from over 30 different nationalities and from all walks of life. Thank you for joining us, Ms. Flores. We have with us Toyin Awofeso, who is a seasoned education administrator with a rich global exposure. The Excellent and Educational magazine, published out of the United States of America, listed Toyin among the 100 most admired people in education in 2021 in its special edition released in the first week of February. She's a global education influencer. She also gives back generously to society through training deliveries. She's a volunteer facilitator for Teach for Nigeria, TFN, and the Teaching Network Foundation of Nigeria. After 15 years of teaching experience, she's now an education consultant, a teacher parent development. She's the lead consultant trainer at Wealth Hunt Education Services, WES, and at Mixida Ed Consult. Do you want to say hello to everyone?
Thank you. I'm so happy to be with you here. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you for coming by. Next, we have with us Miss Pirjo Suhonen. Is that correct? Thank you for sending me the recording.
Close enough. Pirjo Suhonen, it's a tricky one.
Okay, I'll go again. I'll try. It's Pirjo Suhonen.
Perfect.
Thank
Amazing.
You. Thank you so much. Has a master's thesis on educational technology. This would have really helped during the pandemic, I'm sure.
I hope so.
During her bachelor's study on social services, she realized that prevention is the key and education is a powerful way to empower individuals and have an impact on society. Ms. Suhonen is a strong believer in lifelong learning, is passionate about creativity, innovation, and global education. She's worked on, she has a varied work experience from Finland, England, France, and Belgium, working in the multinational European School of Brussels and the birthplace of ALO Finland digital teacher training courses on Finnish education were rewarding experiences for her. And I finally come to my son's former principal, Ms. Smriti Agarwal, who's an award-winning early childhood educator who's been associated with the best schools in a leadership role. She was the founder director of her own studio, Creative Colony, which grabbed the eyeballs of NDTV and Star Plus channels. Writing is a love for her, which won her an award from the Scholastic India team for writing on the topic, The School of My Dreams, which I'm sure she'll talk about in detail. Her published work includes numerous articles in educational journals, magazines, articles, and stories and anthologies. Welcome all of you to this amazing webinar. I'm super excited to listen to all of you. Anything that you'd like to add before I go on to grilling all of you? Or shall we go ahead with the webinar?
Hi, Himali. We look forward to be grilled by you. And thank you for the introduction. Hello, everyone. The first learning comes right now. And when we learn to pronounce each other's names properly, that's the first global lesson that we're going to take.
Oh, tell me about that. Thank you so much. Great. So I'm going to start by really asking all of you a very pertinent question. So the COVID-19 crisis has forced school closures in many countries, and India has still not opened up, heavily disrupting the learning processes of so many children and youth. During this time, distance learning solutions such as online classrooms and computer-assisted learning were implemented to bridge the gap between schools and learners. However, let's look a bit ahead. Considering the future of education, what are your thoughts on the long-term impact of COVID-19 and teaching methodologies? Mr. Fusto, do you want to go first? And then I'll come to you, Ms. Tenzin. Sorry, yeah.
Sure. Happy to offer a couple ideas. One, I think, is at the leadership level, which definitely impacts the methodology and pedagogy level. And the other is strictly in the classroom. So on the leadership level, I think with one gift maybe of C19 is that we may be going forward a little bit better prepared for what's often called a black swan moment, a totally unexpected, unprecedented type event. It could be anything. In this case, it was a pandemic and still is a pandemic. But what that did for many schools who were reflective and who really leaned into the process and didn't retreat from it was to become better at creating crisis plans and contingency plans and things like that. So I think that is a definite positive that can be extracted from C19 and what we've all experienced. On the teaching level, for me, I just believe it creates more of a, as much as the technology has allowed for, I'm a small school person at heart. So it's created for me a much greater hunger and reminder of how important in-person learning is and why it matters. That doesn't mean that tech platforms don't. It just means we need to not forget what that really means to be in person with each other, interacting and having dialogue. So those would be my two pieces.
That's fantastic. I think this is something that's come out of a lot of webinars that I have conducted, wherein teachers and students have often said it's not about learning out of a textbook or the way a teacher really delivers a class, but so much about meeting everyone. There are so many social skills that come into play. So I love the way you put the fact about the hunger to meet in person. I think we're all starving to meet in person. Ms. Tenzin, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I totally agree with what Mr. John said about, the teachers and about the school leaders. But I would want to go about, start from teachers and go to government education boards. As a teacher, I think all of us, my school teachers, my professional learning network, all the teachers have learned quite a lot of skills using Web 2.0 apps and all. Earlier, there was learning happening, but it was slow. Because of the pandemic, everybody had to speed up their, learning and using technology to drive the classroom, because suddenly everybody went online. So that was one thing that teachers, quickly adapted to. Secondly, in terms of school organization, and if you are going to say that after COVID-19, what will be the impact? I feel that we should take some experiences that has been positive during COVID-19 and take it along and continue with it. So blended learning could be one thing where you could have synchronous and asynchronous lessons for the students. Also, we saw that during face-to-face, it was very difficult to organize parent-teacher meeting. Now, parent-teacher meetings, when we went online, it was very convenient because then you could allocate slots and you could meet the parents uh, over a couple of days. Otherwise, usually what happens, you have to speed up and parents do not get much time to talk about their students. So I felt that we could, take it again after the pandemic. And with the government boards, if I have to say, many of the local boards have suffered, in terms of results, because whatever said and done, we have the board examinations at the end of grade 10, at the end of grade 12. But I think because we are into international education, we are an IB school. So for us, because of the internal assessments of the IB, the internal assessments are such that we are not focusing only on exams, we are also focusing on skills. So that helped us, to get the assessments in place also. We were not just restricted to pen and paper and, examinations as such. So maybe the boards and the local boards, they should think about assessment strategies. That was a big challenge for us in India. So I think moving forward, we would look at all these, carry forward whatever good learnings we had during the COVID-19 experience. Yeah, that would be my take on it.
Thank you, Ms. Tenzin. I would completely agree. I think a lot of the PTA meetings or the parent-teachers meeting which she's referring to that I went for, I almost felt like, in the mind, the teacher was actually setting like a dial saying, okay, your time starts now, kind of a thing. So I think a virtual meeting would be great. That would also kind of fit into our calendars. Thank you. I just want to tell all of you that, each of you can take a good 3 minutes to reply. So if you have a few experiences, if you want to share a few examples, please feel free to do that. Ms. Suhonen, I'll come to you next.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
We've reached Finland,
been
isn't
so
it?
many.
Are you in Finland right now? Sorry to interrupt.
Pardon?
Are you in Finland right now?
I am.
Okay.
It's
Finland
beautifully
is...
sunny and hot here now, so
right.
It's lovely. Absolutely lovely.
Fantastic.
There's so many things already mentioned here, and all of them are good, and everything I totally agree with. I think the tiny bug already showed us how connected we are. It would be silly not to see the silver lining of it. I always say that education already is global. Finnish education isn't purely Finnish. None of education systems are. We already learned and benchmarked from each other so much already, but we could do so even more. And not just the teachers, but learners also, because this is only a recent pandemic. We haven't even fixed it yet, but I think it has showed all of us already how we are not a single nation, are we? We are so connected to each other. So we need to teach our kids to be more global, ethical citizens, to be able to solve these sort of global problems. You need to be innovative and creative enough to create the global solutions for things like this. Trust me, this won't be the last one. I think we are still quite lucky that it could be a whole lot worse, the virus. And hopefully not too soon, but you know what I mean. And what else? What else I was going to say? Yes, so I'm hoping that the teachers and the schools and educational policymakers will understand the meaning of not just having academics and standardized tests in schools, but it would be more about competent, creative, innovative powers. so that we can fix things like this. And also collaborative learners and teachers, because no nation is able to fix this all by themselves. So that's what I want to say. Maybe more about the blended learning. I always thought that blended learning is the key, and teachers are who make the magic happen in the classroom. There is no technology yet I've seen, even if it's based on AI, that can beat a teacher. Teacher is still the best app there. And I always said that tech without ed is nothing. And that was my master's thesis also, that I taught kids to do coding, but it wasn't so much about the coding, but the pedagogy to go hand in hand with the technology. How do you integrate it so that you can become more collaborative school and learners, and maybe not just a school, but you can take it even beyond. So there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I can, completely agree to what you're saying, that I think you need an actor, you need a teacher to really power up the classroom. I don't think, technologies and wires can do any of that. Thank you so much. Miss Kato Connell, can we come to you next?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Ms. Tapia. It's great to meet you. Thank you, all the panelists. Great to see you here and to be collaborating. I would like to start with my biases. So my biases is that I'm an IB educator. So a lot of what I say will have been influenced by my experience as an IB educator. And I'm also very influenced by pedagogies of inquiry. So I'd like to start with a question. And my question to everyone is that we might start asking ourselves as educators, what is worth knowing, what is worth understanding, and what is worth being able to do. So I think that it's great to start these conversations and to ask ourselves questions. So when I ask myself that question, I think that what is worth knowing from the pandemic is that well-being has become a massive topic. And I can see it in your plenary that we'll talk about teacher well-being. So I think teacher well-being and student well-being going forward, the well-being and the health of our ecosystems of our schools are going to be very important. And I agree with everything that's been said so far, and especially about anything relating to learning is socially constructed and the importance of the teacher and the students learning face-to-face. That's important, and mental health issues are resulting from being isolated. So because I come from the IB, I believe in a social constructivist approach to education. And this isn't anything new, but I think with the pandemic, we have to resist going backwards in time, because a lot of times when you're teaching online, you're in control of the camera, and it's just, you could take online learning and put it back in the 1930s with the teacher at the front of the class and 30 students all facing you. So we have to resist that urge of going backwards and doing things traditionally. Because in times of stress, teachers resort to what they know, and many of us grew up in very traditional classrooms. So that's my goal to everyone here that's listening in. Resist the urge of going backwards. So I have a little things that I would like you to consider about moving away from and moving towards. And I'd really like to see post-pandemic a massive move away from passive learning. Our kids, we can empower our learners to take action and be agentic learners, and to be problem solvers and solutionaries, where they're creating the solutions. And that's not going to happen if we keep the traditional teaching model of teacher as knowledge holder. So move away from passive learning to active learning. I also think we need to move away from the focus, which in a lot of international schools, they've already got this figured out, but just, I know it's a bigger audience. Move away from focus on the individual and a focus on a social connection, social interaction, and group work, collaboration. It's like the title of the conference, collaboration, connection, and cultivation. I think we have to move away from a focus on the subjects and move towards a transdisciplinary nature of learning, where kids are working together on group projects using skills. One of the other panelists, I think Ms. Patil mentioned, skill learning. We need to focus on the skills of what they're going to be able to do, not just what kids are able to know. Which leads me perfectly into my next point, that we have to stop the memorization of forgettable facts. Learning is not fact knowing. So as a head of a school, I get a lot of parents that come to me and they say, my daughter is brilliant. I know she's only 3, but she should really be in kindergarten. That needs to stop. We don't measure a child's learning by the facts that they can know and repeat, that they can read early. So if I could say going forward, I'd like us to redefine what is success in education and what it means to be a successful learner. And that goes nicely into my next point, which was testing. Continually testing learners inhibits the learning process. I think we should redefine success as the actions learners take with what they know. And it's what they do with their learning. If somebody, in one of my classes years ago when I taught 2nd grade, we taught about products going through processes of change before they are used or consumed. That was a central idea. Students started to inquire into fair trade. And one of my 2nd grade students' fathers owned a factory. And he went home and asked his mom, said, do you think we could sit Dad down and have a conversation and I can find out if the factory workers that we employ earn a fair trade? That's taking action with your learning. That's the real test in life. Are you going to do anything with what you know? Are you going to take action? Are you going to make the world a better place? And then also, I think we have to move away from competition with those unforgettable facts, into collaboration and relationship building. And that goes back to the fact that I believe knowledge is socially situated, and so that we learn more when we learn together. So for people that are very practical, those might be big ideas. My practical suggestions are: we need less content to cover, less knowledge to memorize, fewer tests, and more allowances for group work on technology. And then just resist the slide backwards towards traditional teaching. Thank you.
All of those are super powerful ideas. Thank you. I love what you said about, the action that you take from learning. And I completely agree with what you said on how teachers, when faced with challenges, and why teachers, I think all of us, when faced with challenges, go back to, trying and, go back to our comfort zone, things we've done, we've practiced, we've, been so comfortable with. So thank you for those inputs. Yeah, sure, please come in.
Yeah, can I just ask something? Thank you, that was very inspiring, and totally agree with you. Can I just ask that, you said that you are in IB school, Kate, yes? That
yes,
are teachers giving a lot of autonomy, and have you got many tests? Because one of the key issues, what they say that Finnish education is strong, is because we don't have any standardized tests until A levels when kids are 19, basically, which allows them more to have holistic learning rather than prep and plan and teach towards the tests. How is it in IB schools? Are there many tests that they need to take, and are the teachers sort of penalized if the kids aren't doing too well in them, and how does it work?
Thank you for your questions. In the PYP, there aren't necessarily many standardized tests. There are assessments, you know, like ongoing assessments where you would know kind of teacher-created assessments. However, once children hit the middle years program, the MYP, they are given many summative assessments. And I have a daughter in MYP, and I think the amount of summative assessments at a grade 6, grade 7 level is, in my personal opinion, is a bit much, and more effective learning could happen with less measurement of the learning. And then in the DP, I know less about the DP, but there are the exams at the end. So I think the IB is not as far as the Finnish education, but we are definitely on a path and would be more close to Finnish education than other educational systems. Does that answer
Thank
your
you.
question?
Beautifully.
That's fantastic. Thank you. India has always wondered, how do you promote a student from one grade to the other without an examination? And that's a question India is, and I can see Ms. Tenzin smiling because we have so many exams. My second grader has an exam every week.
No, but Himali, just to add to this, Kate, we also have the IB here. I am one of the IBEN for MYP and have been an online workshop facilitator for 8 years. So you can understand the focus more on teaching skills rather than content. We say that you can get content, just open Google, okay? Type your questions, you will get your answers. But skills are the main important things that the students need to develop.
Thank you, Ms. Tenzin. Ms. Cecilia, Flores, I'll come to you next. Do you want me to repeat the question? We've kind of diverted a bit from it, but do you want me to?
I'm okay. I got the idea. Yes. I mean, sure. I had a lot of things that I agree. I am a big fan of Finland and the things that they're doing as a holistic education, because I think, yes, IB is moving into that direction, but we'll still need to work on that. You know, I am a strong believer that in life, you have two choices. You can accept things as they are, or you can accept the responsibility of changing them. So I think as educators, we have to work for that. We have to understand that this year, the platforms that we were using were through technology, but the human resource was there all the time, because that collaboration that you have with your peers, with people in the other side of the world, that never stopped. And that was something that allowed us also to transmit that to the kids. And when they were seeing that you were putting your 100% through the screen, trying to connect with them, trying to make discussions, trying to listen what they were saying, I think that should remind us this thing that we always say: we want to be lifelong learners. And if we want to be lifelong learners, we have to continue be open to learn what are the things that we are doing in our school, in our society, because like they say, no, it takes a village to educate a kid, but the world is a big village. And that's what we're doing right now. We are bringing things from every place of the world to try to connect, to try to see how something that is impacting in a place that I don't even know could be something that I can start working here. You know, right now I am in Oman, and this place is amazing. It's beautiful. It's surrounded by nature. And just to try to share those ideas with the kids, how any action that I take is going to be impacting my community right here. And in the long term, is going to be impacting the world. So what have we learned? Like, what are the things that we have learned from this COVID is that we need to remember that the biggest resource that we have among all of us is a human resource. And that we have to remind that to our kids so we can continue growing as a community. It doesn't matter if it's like locally or globally, but that's what we're doing right now. Like people from different places around the world, we're trying to share ideas that is not just based on how are they gonna have the outcome of this, because the outcome of life is at the end of life. Every experience is a learning experience. And I think that's the more that we we can call it agency or entrepreneurship or any of those names that we are using right now. The most important thing is that we need to remember that this is a learning process, and our learning process is supposed to be changing, and it's supposed to be improving in every step of the way. So those are my thoughts.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for those thoughts. Ms. Awofeso, I have to come to you next. Do you?
Hello. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I agree with all submissions from the panelists, and what I'm going to add is the fact that for most stakeholders in the education space, the long-term impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic will be positive. That's from the angle at which I'm taking it, because it will reflect the new world we're living in now and the future world. So I see a situation of no going back to the status quo. Now, teachers are becoming more of the learner instead of the student. We are assuming the position of the student. We are so used to having ourselves in front of the class, dishing out information and all of that. But because of the new world, we are taking on board a lot more learning, because we have to learn how to use the new tools for teaching and learning. In that wise, we are better able to support our students. So I see a lot of more classroom walls coming down, giving way to the kind of collaboration we're having here now. We're going to see a lot more collaborations across groups, across age, schools, and even professional fields where we can begin to learn from one another. Before now, we don't see a lot of this happening. We would prefer to go for physical conferences, physical face-to-face training, but now we're hearing words like learning platforms instead of classrooms and all of that. So we see a lot of that coming into place. And I see a lot of relationship happening between teacher and students, because now we have to give the students more of the learning opportunities. We have to give them ownership to learn, and a lot of personalized learning, like some of the panelists said earlier. We're seeing a lot of blended learning, project-based learning, and all those methodologies that will give more ownership to the students. That's what we're going to begin to have now. And like every other person has said, technology has finally come to be one of the most determining factors for effective teaching and learning happening in schools, across platforms, everywhere there is teaching and learning happening. So we have to take on board the idea of technology in education. And lastly, I see a lot of interaction between home and school. Now, parents need us more than ever before, even as we do need them more than ever before. So that's my take on post-pandemic, the post-COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Awofeso. I agree with what you said about, almost all the bits, and about, the parents' bit too, which was not touched upon earlier. Ms. Smriti Agarwal, can I come to you next?
Yeah, thank you, Himali. And as I don't know what to say now, because I'm in the far end of the entire conversation, and everybody has touched upon each and every point that I wanted to say.
So Karthik's team is to be blamed, because that's the they've asked me to cover
Karthik,
something.
I'll talk to you later, okay? Okay, so my 2 bits into the entire thing, I agree with all the speakers there on the panel. Those people have actually given all the points that has to be given. I'll speak from my country's point of view. In India, when the pandemic hit, and right now, even post-pandemic, what I right now feel is that the exposure and the accessibility to online learning, to blended hybrid learning modules is very limited. So here in India, we do not have Wi-Fi connectivity in our 2-3 tier schools in our remote places where children are struggling to go online. So the government is helping, definitely. And we have a lot of radio programs and television programs reaching out to children so that the learning does not stop. There's no gap between the learning program. of the children. But still, for my long-term impact, what I would really feel, if we can have a couple of things. First is a kind of platform which is easily accessible, which do not require too much of expensive infrastructure from the schools or the teachers or the children's parents side. And we can make educational and equitable and equally accessible kind of a program where all the children from any walk of life, any financial background, cultural background can reach out to, because this is something that we can harper upon, that yeah, we have a lot of collaborations going, we have a lot of technology to use, but to reach out to some thousands and millions of children who are left behind, we need to consider that. So of course, in the long-term impact, let's think of innovation where we can actually have some platforms and some means to reach out to these children. And the second would be about shared resources. So our National Education Policy 2020 in India talks about shared responsibilities and shared resources. So the schools which have a wide gap between what the government-run schools and the low-profile schools and the branded private equity schools which we have, there is a big gap. So there is some schools have all the resources in the world, and there are some schools who are struggling with the basics. So if we can share resources, if we can share, the true collaboration, the true meaning of education would come to fore. If we can share resources, if we can share infrastructure, if we can share the basics, and think of children in the center of education, and we think of children to be the main important people. Like we said, like everybody agreed that human resources is the most important thing. The social context, the collaboration and the social interaction is the most important thing. Then where are we training our children to collaborate and to be social and to value human? So here we are not valuing them. If we don't value them, how would we teach them to value our human resources more than anything else? Today we see the children, they're all hooked on to technology. They can hear a computer bot more than their parents. They listen to the gaming instructions more than the adults. They used to hearing instructions in a particular format. Now, if we change that, and if you get down to actually human interactions, that would be wonderful. More than book knowledge, more than examinations, more than forgettable facts to be memorized. Like Kate said, I really agree with her. If we go towards the Finnish education, if we go towards that and we forget about assessing the children on these forgettable facts, and we tell them about life skills, we are actually training them on the 21st century skills. We tell them what perseverance is. We tell them what resilience is, what adaptability and flexibility means. Adaptability and flexibility would mean for the children because of these unprecedented times. Because today we saw this pandemic, and like everyone agrees, it's not the first and the last. The coming generations can be going through much more, and there are many more unprecedented times. At that time, they would need this adaptability, flexibility, innovation, and perseverance and resilience. So let's focus our education towards these life skills and forget about all this information that Google can give us, because forgettable facts are right now on the fingertips of the children. They can just take a smartphone and look for the answers. So let's not give them those answers. Let's build skills. And another thing very importantly that I would like to say is, we can build these skills in children only if, as schools, school leaders, and school teachers, we first showcase this, we model this for them. Let's be adaptable, let's be flexible, let's have resilience, and let's show them that yes, we can collaborate. And I love the platform that we are on today, because we're collaborating here and we're discussing how we can best do it. Thank you so much, Amali.
Thank you, Ms. Smriti. I completely agree. The fact that education ought to be equitable is extremely important for several countries around the world. In India,
Absolutely.
so many of our students have been disconnected from education, teachers have gone and set up classrooms in temples, made students sit, at a corner of every
Right.
pillar. Teachers have gone and there's a particular teacher in rural India who took an auto rickshaw and set up an audio system on top of it and told students, just come to your to the windows of your respective homes and listen to me. That's all you need to do. And
Absolutely,
so
Himali.
that education could continue.
True. So, to add on, there have been teachers who have been building their classes on treetops and on mountain tops to get Wi-Fi. So there's no connectivity on the smart gadgets, So there we are lacking there. Let's make it equitable for all. That's the most important thing that we have to do right now.
Thank you so much. That takes me into my next question, which is that teaching through the pandemic has been more stressful, time-consuming, and emotionally draining. What has become abundantly clear is that for today's educators, the conditions and scenarios in which they are working cannot sustain if we want to avoid mass burnout. In such a situation, how can one meet the social and emotional needs of their teachers? Ms. Suhonen, we're going to start with you, and Smriti, this time you're not the last.
Oh, wow, I love it.
All right. Ms. Suhonen, do you want to go first?
Yes, sorry, it wasn't unmuting myself. So I must say that I raise my hat to teachers in India. I mean, it must be a quite different situation there. In many other countries also, Finland has been fairly lucky that we haven't had massive lockdowns like elsewhere. So, but even so, our schools were closed last springtime, and sometimes they were close-ups if there were many corona cases or even a few because it spread so quickly. But this year we didn't close even once. We had few corona cases, but they weren't directly for us, so we managed to be there. But I must say it has been really super stressful, but I'm a lucky one. It's a good little school, and the parents have been lovely. And I think that it's been actually, in a way, when I talk to some of my friends, for instance, or the parents of the kids, that they are struggling because they are working remotely and they really miss that human connection. When you work with kids and you still can go to school every day and leave your own house, it's good for your mental health in other ways. And when you work with kids, even if they sometimes talk about corona because it's always there, they don't really understand the meaning of it. So I noticed that sometimes I walk to metro and I'm like, oh yeah, I need to put my mask on, that I sometimes forget it myself also. So it's both. It's like a balancing act, that in a way it's stressful because you know that when you're there, you're risking your own health and my old mother's health by working every day and not being in my own home. But at the same time, I like my social connection. So in that sense, it's been better.
That's great. Thank you, Ms. Suhonen. That brings me to you, Ms. Tenzin. Do you want to talk about, how one can meet the emotional and social needs of teachers?
So, as administrators, we have been very flexible at school because we have been online the whole academic year last year. And right from March 2020, we have been online. And it has been a challenge for our teachers. The only advantage for us was that the teachers were already using technology. So shifting and moving to an online classroom was not as challenging as others would have faced. But for us, being an international school, we were using technology, so it was an easy move. So, but still, we did work together with parents as well as teachers. Now, all the classroom that was there in the school was in the bedrooms of the students, right? So, and parents can be quite, inquisitive, and with younger children, the parents are sitting near the child and telling that, why aren't you answering? That other student is answering, So we had to tell the parents to, back off and tell them that when you were not there at school, the students used to do the same thing, and unnecessary stress was there on the teachers' part, right? Because they were exposed. When they were in school, they were doing strategies, teaching, learning, whatever was happening, it was in the school. But here, everything was in the drawing room and the bedrooms of the students. So we had to have that talk with the teachers as well as the parents and the students about what are the rules and regulations regarding online teaching learning, so that the teachers are not stressed, the students are not stressed. Uh, uh, we also had a counseling session. The thing that went very well last year was our consultation time. We gave an hour's consultation time for both students and for parents and for the teachers with the counselor and amongst the teachers and the students. So if anything went wrong in the class or something I did not understand, or the teachers had some queries, or the parents have some queries, they could consult with each other and talk to each other, take an appointment. So that helped a lot. In addition to that, we changed the timings of our counselors. I know they were also stressed, but they were good enough to say that, okay, instead of working from 8:45, they would do it from 9:30 and then extend it to 4:30, 5 o'clock. So that after school time, the counselors were available for the teachers as well as for the students. So that worked very well for us. We did also have some meditation, yoga sessions and dance sessions for our parents and the students when we were completely under lockdown and nobody could go anywhere. So we, through our Facebook page, we had those sessions, and I think that helped. Even the games between the teachers, we had those meetings, online meeting. Though yes, online was too much, but still the interaction between the teachers and the friends, playing housey bingo on online, those things were also there for the teachers. So that helped a lot. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Ms. Flores, do you want to tell us about this? How did you keep your teachers motivated in these stressful times?
I think it's very important that we use a lot of mindfulness and that we try to understand that this is a new way for everyone, for parents, for teachers, for administrators, and to have more conversations about this, because the teacher, at some point, it was not just teaching to the kids, it was teaching to the whole family. And the whole family was like ready to say something, or they wanted to ask questions. So I think it is very important that we remember that we are in this as a community. The conversations from the administrations to the parents, to the parents, to the teachers, to the teachers, to the kids, to everyone, it should be around how we can be more mindful with each other, how we can embrace this change together, and how we can have those moments where technology is going to fail, where you're not going to be able to access everything that you plan for, and it's going to be okay. The most important thing, and most of you mentioned this, the skills that we are developing with ourselves and with our community are those skills. Like, we have to be more resilient, we have to be more compassionate, we have to be more human. I think that is a big factor, and everyone that is part of education should remember that the human part of this is what makes us one of the best professions in the whole world, I think. So as long as we remind ourselves and remind our community that it's okay, and just to breathe and do it again if it's necessary, I guess we're gonna be okay. Our well-being should be the priority for our kids, for our parents, for everyone in the school community. So
that's fantastic. Thank you. I'll come to you, Ms. Smriti.
Okay. All right, so emotional and social needs of the teachers, yes, of course, very importantly, because teachers have been so used to being in the school, interacting with their colleagues and being with the children. And suddenly, when they were actually asked last year to be online, it was a task for them, because many of them did not have the exposure to this, and many of them did, like Ms. Tenzin just said that some of our schools, which have been international schools, are actually using technology in classrooms as well, and we're used to it. But most of the teachers felt isolated, and the merging of the home environment, as already rightly been pointed out by Ms. Tenzin, that it was a bedroom and the drawing room, which were the classrooms. And not only that, it was like the parents were peeping in the teachers' homes as well, because teachers were also sitting in their drawing rooms and bedrooms. So it was like, it was quite a task. And along with that, the big task was that everybody was working from home. So I was working from home, my children were working from home, my husband is working from home, and how many devices and how many voices do I hear in the background? So I'm teaching, and whereas when I'm teaching, I wanted some kind of attention, I do not get that, because behind me, somebody's working from home and they have an important meeting. So there also there's voices going on. Then I have children who have online classes, their voices are going on. Now, if their classes are important, my class is also important. Now, what do I do? There's so many classes which are so important and everything is going on together. So these kind of challenges were actually driving the teachers up the wall. So however used to technology or kind of adaptability I had, but the burnout was really, really at a higher rate, because things were getting out of hand at some point of time. And the lockdown meant that in India specifically, the kind of help and domestic help that we used to were also not coming in. So we had household chores to cater to. So there were spouses and there was family and there was children at home, and we were cooking and we were cleaning and we were teaching and we were doing multiple things at one go. And at that time, a little bit of a support also from the school or the organizations that we work for is something great. Sometimes we used to actually, it would be great to send some motivational WhatsApp messages to teachers, to have this kind of, an online meet where we're just playing games. We are not judging each other. We are not, the school leaders are actually not asking which class did you take today, with what parents said, what the child did, what is the result, why are we assessing teachers all the time on the skills that they're just getting used to. So in case we don't do that, they do not feel that they're always under the radar, always being looked into. See, parents are in any case judging them. School leaders are in any case judging them. Children are not listening on an online class, specifically in the lower classes. So can you imagine a pre-primary or a primary student sitting in front of the screen and listening to the teacher? They do not. I've had videos, I've had complaints where the children would mute themselves and, off their cameras, hide and not actually be attending these classes. So here, why? Because only the reason was that they could not relate. And here the teacher was trying their level best to, bring, they were dancing on screen and they were singing on screen and they were doing everything to engage the students. So of course, we need to handhold them, we need to train them, and we can also have a lot of things. The sessions need not be live all the time. So if we can have some sessions where the teaching can be with a recorded video. So I record it on my time, but during an online class, it can be played for the students. Sometimes it can be interactive, sometimes it can be recorded, sometimes it can be in a different mode altogether. We can have podcasts, we can have different kind of interactions. Without videos, interaction also can be possible. There can be multiple ways to ease out the burnout of the teacher, because to deliver a curriculum, observe children, assess them, give report cards, submit them to the school, everything lies on it's the onus of the teacher. And now, like parent-teacher interaction also online. So I am like, instead of that one day at school where I used to have my coffee and I can talk to my parents, now I have 2 days, 3 days, and each parent has a lot of questions and I have to give all my undivided time to the parent also now. So there, everything is like, too much for the teachers, and we need to support them. We have to give them that exposure. We have to scaffold them, and we have to give them some easy moments and not be too judgmental on them. Whereas in India, I also saw that because it was online, a lot of schools laid out a lot of teachers. So there were a lot of teachers who were out of job, because me as a single teacher, I can take 2 classes together. Yeah, and I have certain time. Schools are not 7 hours, 8 hours. like it used to be. I have a 1 hour online class, so I can take multiple classes, so I don't need my counterparts with me, right? So if these kind of things happen, how do we expect that teacher community to give in their best and, to be emotionally and socially strong? We need to think about them from their point of view. Like, we have to think about the child from a child's point of view. We have to think about the teacher clan from the teachers community, from their point of view. They're doing the nation building. We used to consider them as role models. Teaching was the best and the most noble profession. But today, I don't think so. We're considering teachers in that manner. So we really need to have a very big shift in the perspectives that we have for teachers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to come to you, Kate, but before that, I just want to say, just before I got into this webinar, I've done a piece which is going to appear in our paper on so many schools that have given pink slips to teachers in India. They are playing recorded sessions of classes that were recorded earlier last year, and they made teachers sign documents saying that all of that belongs to the school and not to them. So the student is going to feel that the teacher is right there, but it's going to be a recorded session. In case of several classes like dance, physical training, students, 150 students are being taken together with absolutely, it's really sad. But I'll come to you, Kate. I'm sure you can give us a little bit of a more international perspective on, how teachers went through all of this frenzy with, their pressure cooker lives.
I think teachers get into teaching because they care. So nobody is there for any other reason. And part of what teachers get back is student learning. So I think teacher burnout is real, because I think teachers have been working at an unsustainable level for a long time, as we've just kind of grappled with trying to replicate what would happen in school online. And teachers have been asked to do a lot, but then on top, at least the teachers at my school, what I noticed is they didn't just do what was asked of them. They were going above and beyond to reach out, hold private lessons in their own time. Some teachers, they didn't have time for their own kids because they're helping their students out. So I think we have to recognize that teachers are good by nature, like the teacher perspective. You were talking about, we have to look through this as a teacher perspective, and really as leaders, as governments, as policy creators, not take advantage of the good nature of the teacher. I think burnout's real. I've heard so many of my teachers, my colleagues, and my friends say, this isn't what I signed up for. This isn't what I want to do. And if we start online in the fall, I don't know if I'll make it. It's hard. And I would say that one thing that's already been said is just that we have to recognize teachers and not be judgmental, recognize what they're doing. So one piece of advice I have for leaders is to have some kind of, I agree with the WhatsApp messages. I did that with my teachers. How are you? I don't know if that always worked, but some of my middle manager leaders, because you don't necessarily want to tell your head of school your private business, but other leaders started to model my behavior, and the middle leaders did get a lot of good information. I have a teacher from India, 5 of her family members died in a week. And these are hard times. These are really, really hard times. So I agree with, so I would say, going back to my original thing of inquiry, let's ask some questions. What is reasonable for teachers? What is reasonable? Because when you're online with so many people in the background, how much can you take? What's realistic? What can we get rid of? What do we no longer need to do? Because it's not effective or not working anymore in this current context. And I like this platform and the idea that collaboration, because I believe collaboration can have the work. So what can we do to collaborate? And what are innovative possibilities? How can we get students to take more responsibility for their learning? How can students teach other students and then be learning more? Where can we put the ownership back on the students, which in turn gets them more excited about learning, seeing themselves as more capable. And I also think we need research. I would love to lead this research. What is effective and what isn't effective? If you look at the research on happiness out of Stanford, when you look at what we have thought creates happiness and what actually leads to happiness, it's completely different. And we've learned that through research. We need to know what is effective education in this context where we have some people online, some people in person, and then we have to switch. You know, I've had to lead a switch that came down at a Sunday night at 10 o'clock, and we had to go online Monday morning at 8. We don't always have the lead up time to switch. And then I'd like us to consider reimagining the roles within the schools. For myself, I started to think of myself as a servant leader, trying to like hold everybody up from the bottom. You know, I am here to make everything go for you. How can you use me? Do you need me to take your class? You know, do I need to make a video? You know, what can I help you with? Do I need to provide Wi-Fi, you know, like cellular Wi-Fi to help you? And then I think once we have the research and we have the reimagined roles, how learning assistants can help or teacher assistants can help with the learning. How many teachers are needed? I'm so disappointed to hear that teachers are being let go and one person is having to teach 150 kids. I think that ratio of online learning needs to decrease, not increase. But after we get through those first steps, we need to upskill teachers with ease, within their day, not something added on top of what they already do. How can ongoing professional development be embedded in the job? And not in a sort of like, you have to make a YouTube video tomorrow, so go home and learn how to be a YouTuber. But in a structured, thoughtful, research-based PD. And the other things I just wanted to point out, I think that people were saying about doing things with staff, like having quizzes. I think that does help if you are aware of your context and your culture at your school, so that I think that's what we need to be as educational leaders, is really in tune with the teachers we have, and when are their dips and what do they need, and how can we provide for them to go through an ebb and flow that looks like this within boundaries, instead of, you know, I'm up here and then crashing, to prevent that burnout. Yeah, thank you.
Fantastic points. Thank you so much. I really am not sure if, you know, a lot of schools did map, you know, as you said, the ebb and the flow of, you know, what teachers were really going through. I think if, you know, the conversation, I have a conversation with lots of teachers, of course, not so many from around the globe, but, you know, a lot of them were right up there. They were like anxious. They were like, oh, I need to hang up. Oh, I need to finish this. Oh, I need to record a class. I need to go. I need to complete my assessments. But hopefully, you know, once things open up and schools realize that, you know, campuses are open again, things should get better. That brings me to my question number 3. Mr. Fusto, we're going to come to you. In the middle of a global crisis, do you think a centralized system of education works for both developed and developing nations?
So initially, I thought this might be a trick question for me, because I'm the exact opposite of anything that's centralized. So maybe, yeah, maybe that was intentional on your part, which is fine. But my world, my purpose, my passion, my orientation is for small schools and for decentralized schools and for schools that have individual missions and cultures. So I just believe in that ability as a school leader to have interaction with every single student, have a knowledge of what their goals are, have a knowledge of what their strengths are, where they're trying to get to, and have that same level of connection with families. So for me, when you talk about centralized, I think it's great in terms of scale and large populations, but even within a centralized system, how do you maintain? I mean, you opened up this whole conference with a video talking about family and community. So how does that happen in larger systems, in larger centralized systems? That would be my question for panelists and what I'm curious about, because I can't speak to that. My orientation, as I said, my philosophy is so different and my mindset. So how would you
Can I
answer
jump
that? Or
in?
how would anybody answer that?
Please,
Sure.
please go
Yeah.
ahead, Kate. Yeah.
I can give a case study that I would just pose as a question. Here in Cambodia, they have centralized the education and posted it on TV. And I would ask, in a developing country where not everyone has a TV and not everyone has a smartphone, how is that centralization working to bring up all the learners in a country and to be equitable? So I think sometimes centralization can tick a box and it can make you think that you are reaching everyone. They said, okay, there'll be a consideration, so 10 children can go into the home of the person with the TV. So they made an exception. But if you have 10 people in front of a TV, which channel are you turning? Are you turning to grade 1? Are you turning to grade 5? So I would be very cautious about any kind of centralized system that didn't put the student at the heart and the context at the heart of what we're doing. And if there is some kind of centralization of learning, I'd like to pose that it be student-led.
Does anybody else want to chip in? Okay.
So let me just add. Yeah. Oh no, go for it.
All right. Yeah, I was just thinking that, we as educators always feel that each child is unique, each family, each community is unique, and we cannot, it's never one size fit all. And if we talk about centralization of education, would that be the right step? Would that cater to the needs and individualities of each community, each family, each child, their needs and their skills, their levels? I think it's very, very difficult to have this kind of a centralization at the moment, and globally more so, because of course the child will be going from known to unknown and from local to global. It can never be that you can embrace the entire thing together. So for developing or developed nations as well, it could never be something that you can put education in a box. Like Kate said, it's not possible. And we can't be very happy about that. Yeah, we have standardized, centralized systems which would work for all. It would not.
Thank you so much. Ms. Suhonen, we come to you.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to add that I really like the idea of student-led. Also, Finnish education is actually based a lot on John Dewey, who talks about learners' community all the time and taking ownership, not just on your own learning, but you can learn so many competencies such as communication, collaboration, creative problem solving together if you teach others, for instance. And there was a lovely, when I was doing my master's, I did this gamified mathematics where the older kids were making videos for younger ones so that they are able to play the game. They need to learn multiplication, for instance. So anyhow, that worked really, really well. Both the older ones, they enjoyed doing that, and the little ones really loved them. And it was the best feedback came from a primary year 1 pupil. He was like, teacher. I was like, yes. And he goes, well, I can look at this video again, and if I forget multiplication, I can take my own Legos and just practice with it with the video. So that was lovely. And on a wider scale, again, if I can go back to Finnish education, even if we don't have tests, it is one of the most, according to PISA, Pirls, and TIMSS, it is the most equitable system in the whole world. That not just the differences between the learners, but also between schools are the smallest in wherever you go. However, the Helsinki schools, the gap is growing there a little bit, which is quite concerning. But for instance, if I want to go to Lapland or Southeast or capital area, I don't have to do school shopping because any school is about the same. And so I like to say that we don't test kids, but yet the learning outcomes are good. So instead of investing all that money, for instance, in UK, it's a 4 billion business, prepping and testing business. So what if you invested all that money on teachers instead? What would the learning outcomes be then? And thanks. And,
I think everyone's very excited listening to the billions.
Yeah. It's sad to say, but it is money also. I mean, teachers need the resources and they need good salaries so that they can actually do that work until retirement age, not only until they get a better job, which is the case, for instance, in US, they end up doing 2 to 3 jobs just to be able to feed their own family. So money does matter. And also to say about the Finnish national curriculum, it only changes every 10 years because there's a lot of research that goes before they actually go and implement it. And it's a lot broader. What Dean Fusto was mentioning, I also love the small schools. So this allows it that we have guidelines that these are the 21st century competencies that Finland emphasizes and the level of learning that you need to achieve on primary year 1, 2, and the hours that how many mathematics lessons you need to have, etc. But it still gives teachers a lot of autonomy. And municipalities and schools, they make their own curriculums based on the national curriculum. And still the teacher can choose what methods to use, which tools to use, because every year your class is different anyway. And if you are highly skilled, trained and experienced teacher, you can quite quickly say that, okay, last year I did this, but with this class, they're not into it. So I have to drop it and find something else that really sparks their brain. So those were the thoughts that came to my mind. Oh, one more thing about the social emotional thing, that we also have a saying that less is more, that I think Kate mentioned it, that too much content sometimes, too much content to cover. Don't get me wrong, you won't be able to Google anything if you don't have your own database here, or if you are able to Google it, you won't be understand it too well. Only the broad you can read it, but doesn't get to here. But sometimes it's best to go back to basics and do it well, and then slowly start building on top of that, rather than trying to dump it all in, and it just ends up in a big blur. And it also can create this nasty wall between the student and the content to be learned if you try to push it too hard. Thank you.
You know, Hamali, it was nice to hear a little nod to John Dewey in there. And I think for folks who haven't read his work, it can be pretty dense, but it's still powerful and very relevant today. And so much of education, at least the experiential and progressive side of education, continues on with his initial writings. The other thing I would just say is, I've done so much research, and most of this is on teachlearnlead.net. I have a whole page there on K-20 school design. And I think it's really important that from time to time, educators and educational leaders tap back into all the different forms of schooling there are. So that's another kind of fear when we talk about centralization, because it makes me think of homogenization and uniformity. And there are places where that's absolutely important when it comes to equity. But in terms of philosophy and approach and honoring individual students, I think that's where we have to kind of be a little bit careful. And one way to avoid that is to continue to look at other schools that are doing things in very different ways. So just kind of a reminder of that. Sometimes we can be in our world and think that all schools are the way ours are, but that's just not the case. There's such an amazing diversity of schools and missions and designs out there that if you're not aware of it, it's worth the time to explore. So
absolutely, I cannot agree, any less. Miss Miss Awofeso, hi. Glad to have you back. Do you also want to talk about this? Do you think it's possible to have a centralized system of education?
Yes, a lot has been said on this, and I think I understand in Fusto, and I take his position on the centralization because maybe because I'm working from the third world country, the developing country. So that is a big issue with us here because of our government. And, when we are talking centralization, the inflated bureaucracy is not likely to make it work here because when you have a particular organization or agency in charge of education provision and all of that, that's a problem, really. So because we're saying there is no autonomy for those people in charge of policy, educational policy. There is there's no creativity, the resourcefulness is no longer there. So we're always waiting for them to take decisions on our behalf. Those are not in the classroom to see what happens with teaching and learning are the one taking decisions for education, delivery, and all of that. So there's professionalism is not promoted. And, when we are talking centralization, there's really that much about accountability and evaluation is not there. So I'm not in support of that. Maybe for now, going forward, maybe we'll begin to see some changes in that wise. That's my take.
I would not be able to, as a parent, imagine how a large centralized system would work, because I remember entering school to drop my child, and I remember Smriti standing at the gate. The fondest memories that my child has of his preschool days are that she would stand there as the head of school saying, "Hi, good morning," and she would know every student's name, every mother/father's name. And every time a new class came, I would wonder how she keeps up with so many names. I would find it difficult to sometimes, but she managed to do that. And and my son would say, "So, Mom, the principal knows my name." And we would walk down that long corridor into his classroom. But I think smaller groups, and as Dean Fusto said, we can imagine all of us being a part of this one big system, but everyone has its own culture, its own values, its own design. And I think I completely agree with all of you on that. It brings me to my next question, which would be the last one, that virtual exchanges encompass a range of sustained virtual peer-to-peer learning opportunities across borders and cultures. Do you agree that till we come back to normalcy, the virtual faculty exchange program could be used as a tool to keep both inbound and outbound faculty exchanged in globally focused educational systems? Do teachers need to adopt new strategies considering the international education system? And Ms. Suhonen, maybe you could go first.
Sorry,
No problem.
I was actually reading the comments. Sorry, could you repeat the question?
Sure, absolutely. What we're trying to ask is that till normalcy returns and COVID-19 is behind us, do you think that the virtual faculty exchange program can be used as a tool to keep both inbound and outbound faculty exchanged in a globally focused education scenario? And do teachers need to adopt new strategies considering the international education system?
I hope so. I totally hope so. I think what we already touched here a little bit, I also hope that the value of teachers will grow after this, because everyone has realized that it's just not the same when kids don't go to school, not just the individual level, but societal level too. I mean, most of the parents I talked to, that when they have to work from home remotely and look after their kids and try to school them at the same time, it was just too much, and they were just really happy that it only lasted for a couple of months in Finland, that school as an institution it plays such a big role in any of the society in so many ways, that I'm hoping that has showed it a little bit. It's heartbreaking to hear what has happened in India, that instead of valuing teachers more, they showing real disrespect by getting rid of teachers at these sort of times. I don't think I'm quite answering your question now, but these are just the thoughts that have come to my mind when I've been listening to others. And but what sort of methods they could use? I think there is a way. There is so many things we can do and learn from international teachers, and the coding lessons I mentioned earlier. I actually videoed those kids because they came such good little teachers, coding teachers, and I took the video to India. And via video, I watched it with my own eyes, how these primary school teachers from Finland managed to teach the teachers and the learners in a primary school, couple of them in India, the basics of coding. So we could do so much more, something like that. And I also I love panel discussions because they're quite informal. Like today, it just sparks the creativity and curiosity in a completely different. It just takes you to another level rather than just having a monologue on your own. But really inspiring what we've had today. But the point being, there is a university in Helsinki. It's actually an award winning. It's like a startup / entrepreneurs / learners connected, and they have this coffee room where they have a couple of screens open all the time. I'm just guessing what the countries are because I can't remember, but let's say it's India, Singapore, Malaysia, UK, US. So they have 5 screens open there. So instead of having meetings like this, when you go to your coffee room, you just go like, oh, hi, Kate's there. Hi, how has your day been? And tomorrow there's Dean and Smriti. So we can just have a chat, and then you can say that, oh, you know what? I was trying to teach my kids division and they are really struggling with it. Have you got any ideas? So it's a lot more informal and you really get to know them. And I'd love to do something similar, maybe not every day in your coffee room, but once a week or once a month. Friday, Happy Friday coffee, international coffee meeting. And you don't have to say anything if you don't have anything to say, but if you're feeling chatty, go for it. And same with the kids. It would be lovely. Don't even tell the kids, just put it somewhere in the corridor or outdoor and see how they respond. Do they start talking to the kids having a recess, or what's going to happen? So I like doing stuff like this, that it doesn't have a closed learning objective, but it more so kids have more power on how it's going to end up. Because like these coding lessons, I never anticipated, not even in my wildest dreams, that they would take it so far. And I would actually take the video to India and teach. Well, I didn't teach, I just sat there and enjoyed the show. But But you know what I mean, that this is creativity and innovation in my mind, that just let things happen sometimes.
Absolutely. Ms. Tenzin, could you go next? We'll come to you.
Yeah. Uh, if you're talking about virtual faculty exchange, we did not have any exchanges as such, but I know that the whole IB community, especially the MYP community, we did have the Google chat, um, where people, volunteered to take sessions, and we signed up uh, on different subjects. How do you do, what kind of strategies you could use in your classes. So that happened because of the pandemic. Another thing is that in our sister schools, because we have many schools in the ADYPG group, we had cell meets. So between the schools, we could easily meet because it was virtual. Otherwise, if we have to have a meeting where everybody goes and meets at a certain place, there are logistics involved. It's a lot of, time and everything, energy, effort, everything is needed for that. But because of this online thing, it was easier for us, just a Zoom meeting link, and on Google Doc, you just ask about, okay, what do we need? Who would want to, facilitate? Who is ready to facilitate a session? In fact, we had something called as Unconference 2.0. This, if you Google, you will find out it's a Google site that we had created, and we asked for proposals from IB educators and other experts who would want to, take a session with the teachers. And many teachers signed up, and they got help in understanding different strategies. What are the skills that you can teach teachers, or what are the different strategies you could use in your class with the students in the online situation. So these kind of PD sessions, mini PD sessions, was possible during this pandemic. uh, so I think we did not have a faculty exchange as such, but I know in the Facebook also we had this global educative collective, educators collective, where all, not only IB teachers but international school teachers, they came up and they formed different groups, and they had questions regarding how do you do online, hybrid, blended. There were so many free webinars happening. So I think the teaching community did involve themselves in different exchanges, but it was not like I'm going and teaching someone in US, or I'm doing something in a classroom. It was amongst the teachers. How do you professionally develop yourself? So this has happened. This I have seen in the last year. Yes.
Thank you so much for that. Mr. Fusto, we'll come to you. Do you want to take this question about faculty exchange programs and how teachers, whether teachers need to adopt different strategies considering the new education system?
So, for me, connection and relationship is the core. That's where everything starts, and things build out from there. So when we talk about the faculty piece and the interaction between schools, at Brandon Hall, just over the last few years, we've established about 12 partnerships with schools around the world and domestically. Tomorrow, I would love that to be 24, and the next day 48, and just keep going and going. That is such a powerful way, and also be able to define what partnerships mean when schools do that. I think that can be a panel discussion all of its own. And then finally, earlier when Kate was talking about the concept of solutionaries, so we built a whole program here, the Center for Global Youth Leadership, where we do bring kids together from all over the world to define a passion project of theirs, and in a 3-week period, have to bring it to either a prototype or an actual company or a concept they're ready to unveil. So more programs like that that give kids those kinds of opportunities on a global scale, I think could be really powerful for some school partnerships, for faculty collaborations. And I know there's some organizations out there that are doing that. But that's fascinating for me, to think that you can be in a room with either virtually or in person or a combination with 20, 30 countries. We've got about that represented at our little school, and take on one problem, one challenge that kids can bring ideas to, and empower them, but also teach them accountability as well. Empowerment's a wonderful word, but without accountability and responsibility and learning to fail a few times first, it doesn't have quite, to me, the depth that it could have otherwise. So those are just a few ideas that I toss around for the panel.
Thank you. But do you also think that teachers need to adopt new strategies now?
I think those types of partnerships I'm speaking about force that or allow for that. So absolutely, I think that's critical.
Right. Thank you very much. Ms. Awofeso, will come to you.
All right. Thank you. Yes, I do subscribe to virtual exchanges as a learning tool for educators around the world. A case in question is where we are now, what we're doing now, learning from one another from the comfort of our homes. So a few years ago, educators would opt for physical, learning one-on-one, like I said earlier, conferences and workshops. So virtual exchange is fast becoming the norm for the continuous professional development of educators around the world. And I see a situation, maybe because I'm, operating at the other end of the world, the developing world, that we look into technology in education. It's very pertinent because the pandemic really threw us, into a state of confusion when everything happened last year. So I want to see a situation where teachers and school administrators would have to go through the rigor of becoming education technology experts, as against having technology experts, dictating the space for us and being on the stage. We have to put ourselves through that rigor of becoming education technology experts, and we begin to be the one directing the affairs of what is it that we know how to do best. So it's very pertinent that governments of each country of the world begin to invest heavily in teacher education to close the technology education knowledge gaps for all teachers and school administrators. So we are better able to impact our children, our students. So that's my take. And that's what I think Saathi Global Education Network is doing now. They're contributing their quota to the development of education worldwide. So I hope to see a lot more of that happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Connell, do you want to throw some light on this?
Sure, absolutely. So I think it's really amazing the amount of different types of virtual exchanges that have popped up organically. And I think that really benefits many people. What could happen next is maybe that there could be a library of different types of connections, different ways to connect, that we as our leaders put forth to our staff members. So that's something that we cultivate and curate knowledge around. I will agree with Ms. Tenzin that being in the world of the IB provides a very big global network of schools, and you have a lot of support that way. But yeah, I think for being able to acknowledge the different learners that our teachers are, I don't think one type of virtual faculty exchange program would work for everyone. I think that goes back to our conversation about a centralized program. Some teachers, love to go onto YouTube. Some teachers love to go on Facebook. Some teachers will not access Facebook. Some teachers will do it when they're required based on a school. I used to be a part of Nord Anglia Education, and there were different kinds of exchanges there as well. So I think we know that it works. I would go back to ask the question, for research, what works best, and how can we promote the different ways, like Dean said about partnershiping. How can we promote different partnerships? What are the different virtual ways that we exchange programs? And then for the second part of your question, do teachers need to adopt new strategies? I think we need to take it from strategies to that bigger conversation I was referring to earlier about what we value in education and what we see as a success. I think strategies are like low-hanging fruit, and I'd like to move the conversation to a bigger, more thoughtful, yeah, to our why. Because if you're just changing strategies, what is that going to change in the long run?
Right.
I would agree that relationships are absolutely key. So when we talk about building relationships, is that adopting a new strategy? I think that's considering a new philosophy or considering a new why to why I do this.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Ms. Smriti Agarwal, we'll come to you.
Yeah, okay, Himali. So yeah, of course, I totally agree with Mr. Fusto. Connections and connectivity relations is the key for everything. So where we are talking about virtual exchange, it takes me back to the days when we used to have pen friendships. I don't know whether anybody knows about it. It was very popular in my time. We had letters and we used to have pen friends across the globe writing letters to each other because there was no other means of communication. Today we are sitting at our homes and we're talking on screen, but earlier it was like that. And then it came to my school time when you used to have student exchange programs for particular projects. So it was a particular project for which a particular group of students, specifically those who used to achieve academic success, were sent to a particular country to interact with those students and get their culture and know more about that country and then come back. And that was very limited. So right now, when we're talking about virtual faculty exchange, I love the idea of what Ms. Suhonen gave. If we could have a coffee room with, like you have in airports and all, like world clock with different world timings on that. The same way we have different teachers coming in on the screen and we talking about our difficulties to them and they talk about their difficulties to us. I would talk from the perspective of being an early childhood educator. If I could have something in my room, like something from Reggio and something from Waldorf and something from Frederick Frobel School. And then I can have something from High Scope US. And my day would be made. Like I have everything with me. So of course, John Dewey, like Mr. Fusto also mentioned, is so relevant even today. And similarly, all the philosophies that we talk about. Now, in India, we had our Rabindranath Tagore talking about nature education. We had our own Gijubhai Badeka, who used to be having curriculum implemented through stories and very indigenous materials for teaching aids. And if we can have that kind of exchange programs where we can learn from each other and we can take the best practices. So it's not like I agree with Ms. Connell that, it's not about only strategies. It's about a complete different philosophy. Let's adapt to, learning from each other and also taking on the best practices which would be suiting our environment. So what kind of social and cultural environment are we in? What kind of teachers, what would they love to know, learn, and then how can they implement that? So there the strategies would come in that, okay, fine, I have an exchange program and I've learned and we have exchanged ideas. Now in my, school, in my context, in my school, how can I can make it more culturally and socially, contextual and applicable for the community that I'm serving in, and the kind of parents that I'm dealing with and the kind of children that I'm dealing with, and that would make all the difference. So of course, virtual exchange is something that's really awesome. And here I would also like to mention, if we can, also take into consideration in this entire program post-pandemic and, within the pandemic and even post-COVID, would be how to help the children with different abilities, whether it's physical, it's mental, it's behavioral, it's learning difficulties that they face. I have had, a number of examples where children are finding it very difficult to actually learn and connect on a virtual platform, because these children who need different, complete different practices and complete different human touch to them are still missing out on that. So of course, learning from each other is a great idea. And I just hope that I have enjoyed myself so much today, because I got to learn so much today, that I hope Mr. Karthik and Saathi Global Education Network continues this. Thank you.
They're listening. Miss Flores, we'll come to you. Thanks, Karthik.
Yes.
Sorry, do you want to say something additional?
Yes, I just want to bring just one point. I really like how everybody is so into this global thing. In my experience, I think it is very important that we reach also to the local communities, to the teachers that they don't have access to all these platforms that we can access, because sometimes those exchanges for teachers, for local teachers that they want to learn, but somehow they don't know how to connect, or they don't have the resources to reach to all these communities. How can we re-educate our systems? So among teachers in your own school, you can have those exchanges that, yes, think globally, but act locally, and how you keep bringing those things, because for all of us that we have had experiences going around the world and getting to know different cultures, I think is better when you get to know the locals, when you get to know what are the needs that they have and how you can support them better. Because when you do that, you're learning from them, and it's an exchange. It's really become an exchange, not just for what you can do for them, but what you can take from them as well, And as educators, I think that is the village that we need to keep building, a global village where everybody can have access, where we are holding hands with everyone and taking them to reach to the same point with different resources, with different skills, but that we are providing that for the global community that we are. So that's just my point.
That is fantastic. Karthik, do you want to say something before we move on to the questions? Or should I just take the questions from the participants?
I think we can take the questions for now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we have the first question where Mr. Hassan is asking, sorry, ESA Hassan, I don't know if it's a Mr. or Madam, but what do you miss the most about teaching in person? Who would want to take that? Okay, nobody is opting. What's wrong with you, teachers? Okay, is that you, Ms. Flores?
I can say
Yes,
that.
Please go ahead. What do you miss the most?
I guess just conversations that are out of the script, that is not about, like, when you see those moments when they are lighting up and you see like somebody is making a connection, and then because of that kid, another one is doing it, and then the conversation becomes about the learning, not just like, oh, I'm doing this or that, or I'm answering this question. It's just the learning happens because one person is adding to the other one, and you see that in small kids, and that is, I guess, that is amazing. When you see it, when they take ownership of the things that they're learning, is something, when you have it live and you can see all the faces, now you don't have to look at all the different cameras. I think that's a moment that I miss the most as a teacher.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with Ms. Cecilia. I mean, that eureka moment amongst the kids, it's just amazing when you see that expression. I really miss that. Yeah.
And it's really contagious. I agree.
Yeah.
There's another question from Kala Mandana to any of the panelists. Integrity and focus is known to be an issue in the online classes. Do you have any insights on how this can, be fought? How can you combat this? Where students, especially in higher grades, don't just mute the class and start scrolling through Instagram or any other social media websites. This was yes, please go ahead. Right.
Can I just say, I actually took myself a couple of days course on neuropsychological disorders, but anyhow, the point being was that the lecturer, she did say that please have the camera on. Not only it's more fun for her when she can actually see the people she's talking to, but and she didn't mind even if we were pottering something. Sometimes it helps you to focus better when you are doing something else, not just sitting in front of the screen. It's quite hard way to learn also. So maybe you can even say to students that please don't go to social media. If you need to do something with your hands, but not something that takes your complete focus away. Something that helps you think and listen instead. And also not only that, can't remember who said it in the first place. I think it was Kate that it's so easy to fall backwards when we have to quickly become remote teachers and learners, that instead of being the teacher on stage, make it as interactive as possible. And I really liked it that it wasn't just that we were asking questions and chatting, but she put us into smaller groups, and we had 5 to 10, sometimes 15 minutes time to discuss between each other that what do you think about this case study, for instance, how would you handle it? And then we came back to not a Q&A session, but a short session to share with others what were our solutions to a certain topic or problem. So that also helps. So and even I mean, I was doing the laundry and dishes while I was listening, that then you have to come back to either to chat or open the mic to answer the questions. So I don't quite like it that it's kind of a test situation, that are you listening or not, but just to keep them on their toes and keep them active rather than passive, and then it's more fun both ways and more beneficial too.
And that, that you mentioned about the breaking down of a classroom into smaller groups, I think, again, has the same emphasis that a centralized large system would probably not work. Manoj Sada asks, I recently saw a video that said customized learning strategies like visual, auditory, reading, and kinesthetics is a myth. Any thoughts on that? Anybody who wants to take that?
So actually, that is my father. I think I actually showed him the video, and I think that's what he's referring to.
Okay.
So this was a very, very interesting video, which was very counterintuitive to me because I come from a one-on-one tutoring experience. And this video, it was by Veritasium on YouTube. Some of you might know that channel. It basically said that there's a lot of research in that, like there's this thinking, I think I forgot the name, some person from New Zealand, he came up with the idea that the VARC system, visual, auditory, reading, and kinesthetics way of teaching is the way to go, so that we can customize the learning strategies for every single student based on what their strength is. Like some are visual learners, some are good at reading, some are good at hearing and remembering and so on. But there is actually no credible evidence, scientific evidence that actually goes with this. And it's only popular because of the recent trends in individualism amongst a lot of countries that, with the customization. And it was just a very interesting video. And I showed it to my father. I think that's what he's referring to. But like, let me know if you guys have any thoughts on that.
And all of you said that parents were only peeping in your classroom. Look, his dad is attending this webinar.
True, very true. And that is something like that also reminds me, like there were having challenges about Harvard Gardner's multiple intelligences, and that to be implemented in schools as a strategy. So a lot of schools also popularize on this concept that we have our approaches based on multiple intelligences by Howard Gardner. And there also the strength that how in, the kind of strength that we have in India, specifically in classes, how are we implementing those kind of approaches, because that would need a lot of ILBs, a lot of individualized learning plans that we would be needing. And is that actually even possible in the kind of teaching environment that we have? So it needs specific, teaching learning environments. And I agree that to a certain limit, people are not being able to do it, but it's not entirely a hoax, because it is workable. We do cater to the individual and unique needs of children. And of course, specifically in the pre-primary and primary ages, at that time, children do have specific needs, and there are kinesthetic learners who will not be sitting at one place and learning, and they would like to move around. They like to use their hands and fingers, and and you would not, and they learn the best like that. If you ask them to sit in one place and then learn, and they would not be able to pay attention to you. There are children who are very good with, when it comes to music sessions, there are a lot of sessions which are delivered through rhymes, even concepts and facts. Why do we have theme-based and concept-based rhymes in schools? Mainly because they can be, they're giving the factual knowledge through music and through rhymes to children. So these things do work, but they're not exactly not workable. But it totally depends on the class strength and the kind of strategies and the methodologies that we have, and what kind of teaching learning environment is the school promoting. So it's possible, but it depends.
I just want to add something to this, what
Please go
Smriti
ahead.
has said. Yeah. Because I know I have seen this happen in Cecilia's class. We have worked together, and I have seen her do differentiation very, very well. Okay, so it's not a myth. Cecilia does it, and I have seen it. Cecilia, I want you to say something about this.
Well, something that I like to do, I like to get to know the strength of my students. And I always start my year with the multiple intelligence test, one that is based on pictures. And in that way, I start like, oh, what do you like to do the best? And like reading, writing. So I have an idea what they do. So when I group them, I try to group them, one that is auditorial, one that is visual, and one that is kinesthetic. Because when you give directions, the visual is going to be looking at what you're doing. The auditorial is going to be listening for directions and trying to do, and the kinesthetic is going to be the go and get it. So to me, I can see it in my classroom. I can see how the kids become a team, because they kind of recognize like, okay, you go and bring this and you go. So in that way, you are creating those communities where it's not just one person is the smartest, they are interacting because they have different strengths, and they are combining them to make it work for the team. So Jess is working, and Jess you can do it, because kids will do as much as you believe them, as you believe that they can do. So sometimes it's up to us. So that's why it's so powerful that we as teachers understand that if we believe in them, they're gonna give you their 1000% for sure. So.
Even in real companies or just anywhere, right? Like you work with your strengths and you build towards a common goal. So yeah, I mean, that makes complete sense. Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Tenzin, Ms. Flores, and Karthik. Before I hand on, I can't say stage, there is no stage, but before I hand on, the reins to Karthik, I'd like to say that I think teachers and students have all adjusted to a new normal. And it was so great to learn from all of you that you did things differently. I loved the idea of the coffee room to chat, the WhatsApp messages to faculty from a head of school like Kate, who adopted servant leadership. I think teachers became, and I loved this word that I've coined, have become more than technologists, beyond, the technology and the education, and beyond who was peeping into whose homes and who was judging whom. I think the time was was a testing phase for faculty who joined this profession. As they stayed optimistic and charged up. I think all of you teachers and heads of schools have tried everything in your toolbox to make sure that classrooms came magically alive, that education didn't stop. And not too many of us who were on this side of the screen knew what was really going on, beyond your screen space. I think going ahead, whether we opt for, liquid or the blended learning that, everyone's been talking about, teachers as the powerful humans that they are not going anywhere. So I've loved this conversation with all of you, and thank you for having me host it, Karthik.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much, Amali. This was amazing, the way you moderate the whole session. I really appreciate that. And thank you so much to all our panelists. I just cannot thank you guys enough to join us today, for this Ed conference. And also, I just want to say that it's so heartwarming for me to see I guess the inclination towards collaboration and towards the globalization, because like that's what we are trying to do here at Saathi Global Education Network, right? Like we have built a centralized, I don't want to use the word centralized, we have built an online platform.
A village.
Where all the schools all around the world can join, their school officials can join, can talk about each other, can share their work, and can share about what's working for them, what's not working for them, everything, and go towards a collaborative online community for their students as well. So it's just I'm just glad to hear that come out from all of you as well. So yeah, big thanks to all of you for joining us here today. So yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
For
you.
having us.
Yeah. Thank you, Karthik. Thank you, Mali. Did a great job. Thank you.